Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Lemonade podcast. We're here with Bryan Ferre today, and we're so excited to have him on. Bryan, do you want to kind of just introduce yourself a little bit, what you do, where you're from?
Yeah, sure. So currently, I operate a software platform. It's kind of funny how it came about. I started my career over 25 years ago as a graphic artist, and as the internet kind of came of age and outsourcing became much easier and globalization and all of that, a lot of what I used to do kind of went overseas, right?
Okay.
And so consequently, over the years, I've created some really amazing friendships and relationships with professionals in Russia and Pakistan and India. And as I have watched their own growth and development over the years, they're very talented and their work is phenomenal. But because of the way the internet kind of evolved, a lot of them really struggle to make a living as a freelancer or as an outsourced professional. So a couple of years ago, I left what I was doing at the time and decided with the advent of blockchain technology, I could actually solve a lot of that. So a couple of years ago, I brainstormed that and came together in an amazing ecosystem of people. And so that's what I'm doing today.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. So where are you from? Around here or?
So I grew up in Utah, just out where UVU is now. That was basically my stomping grounds when I was a little kid. When I became an adult, I left the state, and I was really gone for most of my adult life. I went to college in Arizona, spent a number of years in Washington, D.C., and then most recently, Southern California for almost 7 years, 8 years, something like that.
Nice.
And then my life kind of took a big turn. My wife passed away in her sleep 7 years ago.
Oh, no.
And at the time, we had two really little kids.
Yeah.
My daughter was 3. And so I decided to move back to Utah so I could be closer to my brothers and sisters and my mom and dad, and they could help me, raise these two little kids.
Yeah.
And not long after I moved back up here, I went on a date with a girl that I knew in high school, and that was, it was awesome. But yeah, we ended up getting married. So now she and I live in Pleasant Grove, and we have 9 children between us.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah. So a girl on our team, Courtney, is actually your stepdaughter, right?
Yeah, I call her my daughter.
Your daughter,
yeah. She's technically
your daughter.
A stepdaughter.
She's awesome. We love her.
Yeah,
That's
she
awesome. Really
is. She comes from a really great family. Her mom and her dad both are really good humans.
Yeah.
So
she's the best.
It's been fun. She
Nice.
just gave me our second grandchild.
Oh, yeah. They're so cute. We love them, too.
They are.
That's awesome. Well, so the company that you run now, you're the brand president for, right? Correct?
Yep.
And that's called Uplevll.
Uplevll, yep. Uplevll is a platform, actually. It's a platform that has 5 different software applications connected to it.
Okay.
The primary driver, though, is helping freelancers around the world,
Yeah.
A freelancer in Pakistan, a good friend of mine, she's an illustrator, extremely talented. She used to make probably $40-50 a month.
Oh, dang.
And working inside Uplevll and our freelance marketplace, she's able to more than double that without doubling her workload. So,
nice.
So it's a really powerful platform to really help people all over the world do better. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So would you say that like what you're doing now is one of your purposes in life, or would you?
Yeah. So I kind of have a weird story, I guess you would say. When my wife passed away, I kind of brought my career to a close a little bit, and I actually went back to school. So I was 46, I think, at the time, maybe a little older than that. But I went back to school and I got a bachelor's degree in natural medicine. And then I went on to complete a master's degree in natural medicine. So for 6 years after she died, I literally traveled all over the world speaking with physicians and doctors and even family groups and family counselors and wellness counselors, and was teaching about the condition that my wife passed away from. Mm-hmm. And so I really have two purposes, you might say. Yeah. One is I'm very passionate about that condition and educating people about it. And it's a condition that is overlooked a lot, and it's a very prevalent condition. So anyway, so I still spend a lot of time speaking, writing, being on podcasts like this where I talk about it. But it's interesting how those two worlds sort of collided about 2 years ago. Good friend of mine, and I've worked with him for 20 years, called me and said, you need to come and look at this blockchain tech. And when I first met with him, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. I was still really into doing the traveling thing and the speaking thing and the health natural medicine thing. Yeah. And so I told him no. And I told him no for 3 years. But every year on my birthday and every year at Christmas, he would call me and say, you got to come and look at this. So a couple of years ago, I went and looked at it, and there were 3 projects that were going on at the time. One of them I was not interested in at all, and 2 of the other ones I was fascinated, and I really thought, wow, this can make an impact. So the reason I tell you that whole backstory is when I was traveling around the world, I had the opportunity to speak in Russia. I was in Amsterdam. I've been all over the world, and consequently, that taught me something that I guess I didn't really know before, and that is that we're all the same. Right? Yeah. Doesn't matter where you go. People worry about the same stuff. They care about the same stuff, and that really. I shouldn't say it was eye-opening because I expected nothing less, but it showed me that we are all just one. And so I would say my real purpose is to find ways that we can use technology. Every generation has a new opportunity to leverage a new idea, leverage a new technology. And now that I'm in my 5th generation, I've seen that happen 5 different times. When I was a little kid, I was born, 10 days after we landed on the moon. And so I grew up in the time of the space race, right? Yeah. And the space shuttle and all of that. I also remember the first fax machine I ever owned, right? Like I've gone through these massive changes. When I was probably 25, it was 1996, somewhere in there, I got a phone call from a buddy, and he said, literally his words were, "Have you checked out the internet?" And my response to him was, "Don't waste your time. The internet's a fad. Really? It's going away."
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so interestingly enough, a couple days later, I was driving to see a client. It was about 40 miles from my house. Mm-hmm. And I had to stop at a print shop to print out some stuff so that I could show my client. And when I was in this print shop, the girl behind the counter that's printing my stuff, she says, "Would you like to get on the internet while you're here?" And I said, sure, because he had just called me and told me to check it out, right?
Yeah.
So I sat down at this computer, and she said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. What do you do on the internet?" And
yeah.
She says, and at the time, I was young, starving artist, and I said, "Well, I want to get a job as a creative director, art director, something like that in New York." Mm-hmm. And I was in Utah at the time. And so she typed a bunch of stuff in the computer, and then all these different job postings came up. And there wasn't anything in New York, but there was a job posting in Washington, D.C. And so I read what they were looking for, and I felt like I was a good candidate. I'm a pretty good writer. Mm-hmm. And so at the bottom of the email, it said, or at the bottom of the posting, it said, send us an email to this address. So I raised my hand, and the girl came over, and I said, "What's an email?"
No
and
way.
she actually created my first email account My first email account was brian@hotmail.com. That's how
The first
early I
OG.
was. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And so anyway, I typed up this amazing letter, really good cover letter, right? And like 2 weeks went by and nobody called me, and I was like really bummed. And so I decided to call the agency that I had applied at. And the girl that answered the phone, I said, yeah, I sent in an email and no one called me. And she said, well, she probably emailed you back. And I said, oh, of course, I'll look into that. Well, I got in my car and I drove 40 miles to that same print shop because I thought you had to be on the same computer to check your email.
Oh,
right?
no.
So I waited in line to get on this computer, and sure enough, she had emailed me back and wanted me to get an appointment to be interviewed. And at the time, like I said, I was a struggling artist, didn't have a lot of money. I think I had like $800 to my name. And so I bought a plane ticket. And I'll never forget this because it's a funny story, but after my plane ticket, I had $150. And so in my mind, I thought, I'm going to land in D.C., I'll take a cab and do the interview, and then I'll take a cab back to the airport and stay at a hotel and fly home. Well, my cab ride to their office was $90.
Oh, no.
So I didn't have enough money to get back, right? So anyway, long story short, I interviewed, and at the end of the interview, I was too embarrassed to tell her I didn't have enough money to get back. So I walked from Tyson's Corner to the Washington, D.C. airport. It's like
No way.
19 miles.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So anyway, she hires me. This is an important part of the story. So in the interview, she says to me, we really like you. You're articulate. Your designs are amazing. But what we were really looking for was a web designer. And I had now been on the internet twice. Once to send the email and once to check the email. Right?
Yeah.
But I knew she didn't know anything about the internet, so I just made stuff up. And literally, I'm just BSing my way through this.
Yeah.
So she hired me as the first interactive creative director for the agency. So now I am a professional web designer.
Yeah.
I've been on the internet twice. And my first week on the job, they had me go and pitch a big client, Fannie Mae, to build their website. And I went in there, and I knew they didn't know anything. Nobody knew anything about the internet, so I could just make stuff up.
Yeah.
So anyway, we won that project. The new Lemonade site that you guys just put out, the site that we did for them back in those days, like it took us a year and a half to build, and it wasn't even close to what you guys have, right? That's how far things have come.
Yeah.
Anyway, I tell you that funny story because that's how I kind of got into building software and doing all of that. And and then about 6 years ago, my good friend called me and said, come check out blockchain. And I said, oh, don't worry about blockchain. It's a fad. It's going away. So I'm really good at predicting the future.
Yo, totally. That's hilarious. Anyway, well, are you glad that you did get into blockchain?
Yeah. In fact, it was funny. He called me. This is after 4 years of calling me. Yeah. He called me right around Christmas time, and he said, I'm not taking no for an answer. You have to come up here. And he said, I'll pay you $10,000 for the day. You just come up and listen to me for one day, and I'll pay you $10,000. And I was like, okay.
Might as well.
So, so I went up there, and we had probably met for about 30 minutes, and all of a sudden I started to really see the value of the tech itself, right? Not the outcome of the tech, but the actual tech. And we ended up staying up almost 13 hours and talking. We didn't stop for 13 hours, and then that was it. The next day I was on board, and I provide sort of high-level consulting to a lot of the different projects, but am laser focused on, I have been from day one, I'm laser focused on how this tech can really impact the world. I tell people all the time, I only have two things that I feel really guilty about in my life, and I've screwed up a lot, but I don't feel guilty about that because I learned from it, right? But the two things that I really feel guilty about is that there's still people on this planet that are hungry. That just, that's mind boggling to me that in 2023, we haven't solved that.
Yeah.
And then number two is access to clean water. Like those are two things that if the world got together, we could solve that in a couple days.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
So it's kind of bad that we haven't done that. So,
Yeah.
and I think what we're doing in our project is giving opportunity, right? I love creating entrepreneurs. I love teaching young people how to make money, right?
Totally.
And I actually think it's better to teach young people how to make money than it is to teach them how to feed themselves, right?
True. Very true.
Because if you can figure out the entrepreneurial spirit, I was giving a speech just a month ago, and I started it out with, I believe, and I believe this with all my heart, that all of us, 100% of human beings, are born entrepreneurs. We're willing to take risks. We learn at a rapid pace. We don't think everybody that tells us we can't do something, we know we can.
Yeah.
We just have that attitude, all the attitudes that an entrepreneur has to have. And then we go to school.
Yeah.
The schools kind of teach it out of you, and they teach you to be scared of this and that and the other thing and take the safe roads and all of this stuff. So I'm all about teaching people around the world just how to make money. I have a good friend in Pakistan, like that's that same girl. I taught her how to go from what she was making to more than 5 times what she was making, just with a couple of tweaks.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. And coming from a creator, like I'm in that space as well, and so is Sully, we're really appreciative of that, because sometimes you do something and you're like, put so much work and effort into being a creator and creating stuff for brands, and then it gets nowhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, now I got to redo it. So like someone who's like really pushing for that and like supporting those people is awesome. I love that.
Yeah, so I told you I went back to school, and one of the things that I studied, and I've been studying this for a long time, like most of my life, but the idea that human beings are born to be creators, right? And the only ones that aren't are the ones who were either told that they can't be, and they believed it, or two, they were told that they shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, I work with a lot of physicians. I work with a lot of dentists. You know, the dentist is called dentist because it's talking about your mouth combined with artistry. That's where dentistry comes from.
Interesting.
So if you think about it, dentistry is an art.
Yeah,
You know, it's an
true.
art and a science. So anyway, I believe we are all creators at birth, and I love to unleash creativity in people, because I think ultimately that's why we're even here.
Yeah.
To create and make things better.
Totally. That's awesome. So with your with Uplevll, how is the blockchain? Is the blockchain like integrated with it, or do you guys utilize it? How does that work?
So we are integrated to the Pixel blockchain, and the Pixel blockchain was created to facilitate entrepreneurship around the world, to really remove some of the barriers that exist. And everybody thinks that the economy is easy global, right? But it's very complicated, and so that's why we created the applications that connect to that blockchain. So we leverage proof of action. So for example, in our freelance marketplace, all you have to do in order to earn your action points is be engaged, right? Like be exchanging ideas, so you can actually earn on the platform without actually having to do the work of the platform. Now you earn more if you do work, right? But we have other apps that are integrated to it, and our long-term goal is to open the door to lots and lots of applications being able to connect to the blockchain and then leverage that sort of proof of action engagement type thing. So that's the grand vision. We're about a third of the way there.
Yeah. It's always a process, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love your sense of purpose. I think that's awesome that you're empowering creators and all over the world. Do you have any advice for anyone who may be struggling to find their own purpose in life?
Yeah. No, I'm full of advice. I'm really good at advice. No, I do believe that everyone, I actually think that the creative process is much different than most people think of it as, right? Like, if you're an illustrator, you think the creative process is about, creating something on a piece of paper. But the reality is the creative process happens in our mind, right? And the output of it is just the output. It's the inputs that make it really powerful. And so my advice to really anyone, and I would say specifically folks that are stuck or having a hard time or whatever, is step back from what you're doing and realize that what you create in your mind is what actually comes to be, right? I'll tell you a funny story. So I study quantum physics and sort of this idea of the multiverse, and I'm into some pretty weird stuff. But but watch this. So there was a Saturday in 2020. You remember everything was locked down, and there was a shortage of toilet paper, right?
Oh yeah.
And which I don't think was true, by the way. That's a conspiracy. I'm just kidding. So anyway, one Friday night, my wife and I went to bed, and right before we went to bed, we had made a plan to get up at 6 o'clock the next morning and go to Costco to get in line to get some toilet paper.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that was 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, and the alarm goes off at 5:30 on a Saturday, and you can't remember why am I getting up at this time?
Yeah.
And finally we started to kind of wake up, and we're like, oh yeah, we're supposed to go to Costco. Well, the night before, I had been talking to my wife about the creative process and how really you can create anything you want in your life, literally anything you want, anything you desire. And, of course, she says to me, you're full of hogwash, whatever, right? Well, so I decided to use this trip to Costco as a way to show her how what we think about actually manifests, right? So she hates it when I do this. So especially at 6 o'clock on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, we get in the car and we're backing out. We live in a cul-de-sac. We're backing out, and I stopped the car and I turned to her and said, which way do you want to go? And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, there's literally infinite ways that we can go to get to Costco.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, there's not. There's just one. You just go down this, And I said, no, what if we went this way? Or what if we went that way? Or what if we went this way? What if we stopped and made out on the side of the road? What if we turned around and went back? We could get out right now and start dancing.
Yeah.
Infinite possibility. And the only thing that actually came true was the way we decided to go.
That's true.
Right? We decided to take a left and then a right, go straight, make a left. But that was the only thing that actually happened.
Yeah.
And yet all those other possibilities exist. So when I'm talking to especially young people, and all my kids are creators, right?
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a sickness, I don't know. But whenever I'm talking to especially young people, don't let your mind stop you from doing anything that you want, because the only thing that's actually going to happen in your life is what you decide. It's the only thing. In fact, the word decide literally means to cut off all the other possibilities. I'm just going to choose this one. And unfortunately, some people get stuck in, well, I got to do this and I got to do that, and I got this deadline, I got that. It's like, you don't have to do any of those things.
Yeah.
You choose to, and it's probably good that you choose to. But the reality is, your mind is the infinite source of creating who you are and what you do and what you produce. So that's my
awesome
advice.
He's giving me David Goggins. That's hilarious. Have you ever thought about writing a book, or have you written
I
a book?
have written 3 books.
Oh, 3.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I wrote a book called The Myth of Knowing. And the idea behind it is, once you feel like you know something, then you're done, right? I don't need to go any further into investigation. And the reality is, it's impossible to know anything because everything changes,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, that was that one. And then I wrote one, it's a business book. I developed a process that I used to do with my clients where I would get inside their head and really get, like you guys did with Lemonade, right?
Yeah.
Like you go through this whole process of who are we and what's our story and what's our look and what's our feel.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book about that, and then I wrote this other one that I won't talk about.
All right.
It's a reality based.
Okay.
Like how does reality come to be? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, Brian's a marketing genius, and we've worked very close with him, and he's awesome, and we love it. But do you have anything else you want to add, or?
No, just that, and I think you guys know this, right? Like I said earlier, there were a couple projects that I was completely on board with from day one, and your project was one of them. And I think, what you guys are doing is going to impact individual lives, but I actually think over the long term, it's going to fundamentally change society if we do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we choose to do it and we do it.
Yeah.
I have some of the most generous friends in the world. These people are just really good people, and I believe most people are good, but they just get stuck. They get stuck in, the rat race or whatever. But I'm excited to be a part of it.
Thanks. Thank you. Sully, anything to add? We're good? All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you. Thanks for having me.